Hello, my FNAF fanatics. Today I will present a big theory of mine from the film that ties to the games. But before I start, I want everyone to know that this is a theory and speculation. I'm just putting together evidence and trying to make it work together. Please no hate, and keep the comments respectful. Thank you. With that being said, let's get right into the video. First off, I want to say happy 1 year anniversary to the FNAF movie. And now, let's get started. First things first, I want to start out with where I think the film is gonna go, and that is I believe Mike is gonna be revealed to be William's long-lost son. I know you're wondering how and why. Well, let me point some things out in the scene where we see Mike is chilling in the forest with his family and Garrett wanders off. We see that a man is kidnapping Garrett in a car. If you look closely at the back of the car, you can see that it is missing a license plate, meaning that this car might have either been stolen or it was Williams, and he didn't want to get tracked down by the cops. This may also indicate that it was a planned out attack. Now, why do I think this? Well, let me explain. If we notice the setting in the film, if you look at Vanessa's police car, you will see GFPD, which is Granite Falls Police Department. If you look at the papers Mike is handed, you will see it says Minnesota. Now, if we narrow it down, there's a city in Minnesota called Afton. So the movie may have taken place there. Who knows? Now, onto the kidnapping of Garrett. We know that Garrett was confirmed to be kidnapped in Nebraska, but that's not Minnesota. So this means that Afton traveled all the way down to another state just to kidnap a kid in the woods. That means this was likely personal to him. And if we take a look at a map, we see that this would be a 7-hour drive. And Afton was a complete different state. If you ask me, that sounds like it was personal to him, and it was planned. Because why would Afton travel all that way just to kidnap a random kid in the forest? Well, he might have taken a plane. If you look at the end credits of the movie, you see there's a random plane in the back. Could this mean something? Now, on to the next thing. Why on earth would Afton travel all the way down here to kidnap Garrett? Well, I personally believe Mrs. Schmidt, Mike's mom, is in fact William's ex-wife. Maybe Mike was taken from William at such a young age that Mike barely remembers him. Or she was pregnant with Mike and left him because William was abusive and unfit to raise a child, and then remarried to Mr. Schmidt. And this would mean that Mike thinks his father was always Mr. Schmidt, because he grew up with him. Now back to William. I believe William kidnapped Garrett to give back at his ex-wife, Mrs. Schmidt, because she took his kid, Mike. This would be symmetry to him, to give back at her in a way that would hurt her. Now, on to the next part. In the scene where Mike is invited to Raglan's office, we see that after William scolds Mike, William pulls out the files and looks at Mike's name. He stutters a bit, and then offers him coffee.
I am just trying to figure out who you are, Mr. Michael Coffee?
Awkwardly, people will think that it was because he recognized it was his brother of the kid he killed. But I believe it's something more. If we look at the FNAF movie novel, If It Matters, it says, Mike smelled Raglan and he smelled like his old childhood home, and the damp dark basement he used to live in. We know in the games Afton has a bunker under his house. We see that in sister location Mike goes down to do a task for William. Could the bunker possibly be what he is referring to? This shows us that Mike remembers something from the smells of William, which is also really interesting. Vanessa in the game says a similar thing in tape 9.
I don't like dark basements.
I'll get back to the book comparisons later, but let's move on to Mike's dreams. We know that in the games, Mike is having dreams of the nightmares. We see that Mike in the film is having dreams of the kids and his brother. We know that in the games, Mike is facing the guilt of killing his brother. And in the movie, Mike is facing the guilt of not being there for his brother, and keeps trying to go back to the moment in FNAF 4. He faces the guilt of losing his brother, and feels responsible, just like movie Mike. This is also interesting, because he is attacked by the spirits in the film, and we see that he is bleeding, as Vanessa says.
You're bleeding, by the way. It's nasty.
This applies to the FNAF 4 Game Over screen. Now, onto the Mike Afton Easter eggs from the film, such as the pill bottle from FNAF 4, the alarm clock from FNAF 4, and the sun clock from Sister Location. There's also Mike doing push-ups and exercising like in the logbook. Now, onto the similarities between Mike and Vanessa. We see that in the scene where Mike is talking to William, Mike says,
"That's 2 things."
and Vanessa says,
That's 2 jobs.
There's also the scene where Vanessa is in a coma in the hospital, and Mike says to Vanessa,
Vanessa, I don't know if you can hear any of this, but I'm having a hard time just processing everything that happened.
and in FNAF 4, we see that Mike is talking to the bite victim saying, I don't know if you can hear me. Could Vanessa possibly be Mike's lost sister? I also want to point out some minor comparisons between Mike and William, like the similar wounds where William is getting spring-locked and where Mike is bleeding. And we know how Scott loves to foreshadow things through subtitle details. Now, onto the design choices in the film. We see that Mike and William are wearing contrasting outfits that usually symbolizes familial connections. In films and shows, the antagonist and the protagonist, as well as Mike's outfit in the film, we see he is wearing a similar outfit to Michael in Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location. The long sleeve shirt, the blue jeans, the brown shoes. Gotta love the attention to detail. Now onto more details of the way William speaks and talks to Mike. If you notice, William is the only one who calls Mike Michael in the entire film. Now call me crazy, but when a mom or dad gets mad at their kid, they call them by their actual name. If we see in the film, at the beginning of the film, when he says,
Mr. Michael
Farewell, Michael Schmidt.
to me, this sounds like he's disowning him as a son for being an Afton, and it's funny to me if this is the case. Another interesting thing I wanted to point out is the comparisons between William and Jane, such as them saying similar lines, just like Mike and Vanessa, such as,
You have a change of heart.
In your heart, you know that this is the right thing to do.
We're all for temper tantrums, aren't we, Vanessa?
She reminds me of you, you know. Always with the temper.
Another interesting detail is that William and Jane supposedly died from Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie, which might connect them as siblings if Jane survived. Here's another thing. We never saw her body when they got home, and if Jane died, then they would have taken Abby away from Mike. But if Jane is William's sister, that would make Mike's William's son. There's more I want to say about Aunt Jane, but I'll save it for another video. Now, I want to point out some minor stuff and Easter eggs, such as in the family portrait, Mike's supposed dad giving Mike bunny ears, possibly being a foreshadow of Wilda. And when Mike is talking to Vanessa at the lake, he says,
Every night we would sit down together, we'd have family dinner, and we'd hold hands and say grace.
we look at Five Nights at Freddy's security breach, we see the after table where they were gathered around. Now, I want to move on to the movie novel and the descriptions it makes of Mike and William. If we look at chapter 3, page 32, all you'd have to do is keep the place tidy, Raglan finally said, and keep people out. That's two things, Mike said. A muscle twitched at the corner of Raglan's eye. The right side of his jaw bulged briefly, and in chapter 4, page 43, my friend says you're an idiot, Abby told Mike, glancing toward him again. Mike's face went rigid. A vein at the edge of his forehead got bigger, and looked like it was hopping up and down under his skin. Abby thought she could hear his teeth grinding as he turned around and headed toward her door. William and Mike are shown to get angry easily, just like each other, and have the vein thing. And then there's this line from chapter 18, page 187 through 188. Mike thought the completed fort was incredibly well fort-like once it was done. After the animatronics had righted themselves, everyone had worked together to fill in the gaps in their edifice with more chairs. The result was a structure that had remarkable symmetry. Mike literally says Afton's line, "Symmetry, my friend."
Symmetry, my friend!
There's one more line I want to share from the movie novel, and it's referring to Mike as Violet in the book as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. I Like to Beat Up Dads. William Afton is like Dr. Jekyll. If Mike is like Dr. Jekyll, you see the comparisons? William puts on a facade during the day, but at night he becomes the monster, Springtrap. The book even says that Mike is like the person who would dig out their own eye with a spoon rather than asking for help. What's funny is Mike said he'd rather dig his eye out with a spoon than asking for help. To scoop his eye out, which is an organ, in the games, Mike's organs are scooped out and he is left with no eyes. Now, I want to point out some very minor details that might mean something or nothing, such as the concept art they used to make Mike in the film. If you see, it's Michael Afton fan art. Also in the opening credits, the name titles for Mike and William, Vanessa and Jane, flash purple and stay purple for a bit. Again, this probably means nothing, but Scott loves foreshadowing. And one more thing that is very minor that might have meant nothing but is interesting is when Abby started scribbling Mike's face out, the ghost kids turned against Mike, and the moment she used the drawings to show the kids William, they attacked him too. So Abby using the drawings to control the spirits to which they attack Mike and William is very interesting, which might connect them more. Again, this was a theory I combined and put together. I'd love to hear all your thoughts and theories in the comments. Do you think Mike Schmidt is an Afton or not in the films? Be sure to tell me in the comments. I'll see you guys next time.